A developer spent 9 years and $4 million building a project that couldn't move an inch, all because of a rusted tractor he once gave away as a joke to a 12-year-old girl. What did Lena Voss know that a room full of lawyers didn't? Donovan Hess had not slept. He was sitting in his car outside the Harwick County Permit Office at 7:43 in the morning, phone pressed to his ear, reading the same 2 sentences on the same county record for the 4th time. A $4.2 million construction project, fully financed, partially pre-sold, 31 months into a 36-month loan window, had just been frozen at the final site approval stage, not by the county, not by the environmental board, by a 12-foot strip of dirt that nobody had looked at in 9 years. He dialed. 4 rings. A young woman answered. Calm. No greeting. Donovan said, "We need to talk about the south boundary." She said, "I know." Her name was Lena Voss. She was 21 years old. She had been expecting this call for 3 years. Rewind 9 years. Harwick County Agricultural Equipment Auction. 3rd Saturday in October. Folding tables along the south wall. A coffee pot that had been burning since 6 a.m. 14 people with numbered paddles and canvas jackets, most of them there for the hay rakes and the irrigation pumps. Lena was 12. She stood near the back fence with a spiral notebook and a mechanical pencil. She was not holding a paddle. She was not bidding on anything. She was drawing a map, not of the equipment, of the land behind the auction barn. She had walked the south edge on the way in, counted 3 fence posts, noted the creek line, measured her steps along the access road, the gravel strip running along the bottom of the property, 12 feet wide, heading east toward the back parcels. She had written down 340 paces. Nobody paid her any attention. At the far end of the lot sat a 1952 Farmall M tractor. Left rear tire flat, engine seized. Rust on every surface that should have been painted. Reserve price, $18. The auctioneer had called it twice. Nobody raised a paddle. Sterling Caldwell noticed the tractor, the way a man notices something he can use for a moment of entertainment. Sterling was 44, 3rd-generation money. He wore a wool coat to outdoor auctions and called it networking. He had already purchased 2 adjacent parcels that morning, and he was in a good mood, the way men are in a good mood when everything has gone exactly the way they planned. He walked over to Lena. He looked at the notebook. He looked at the map she was drawing. He laughed, not meanly, but carelessly, which is sometimes worse. He turned to the auctioneer. "Give the girl the tractor," he said. "I'll cover it." He pulled $18 from his billfold. His paralegal, a young woman in a gray coat, printed the transfer slip at the registration table. Sterling signed his name in 2 seconds. Tractor and contents of Lot 14, transferred to Lena Voss, Route 4, Harwick County. He handed it to Lena without looking at her. "Something for you to fix up," he said. 3 men near the coffee pot laughed. Someone said something about letting kids drive. Sterling was already walking toward the irrigation pumps. Lena did not say thank you. She did not react at all. She just looked at the transfer slip for a moment, then folded it once, straight down the center, and slid it into her coat pocket. She asked the paralegal, "Can I get a county-recorded copy of this?" The paralegal looked uncertain. Sterling called back from across the lot. "Just give it to her." The paralegal stamped it. Lena took the copy. She folded that one too. 2 pieces of paper. Same coat pocket. She looked at the tractor for a moment. Then she looked at the gravel road running along the south edge of the property. Then she wrote 3 numbers in her notebook. 340. 12.971. Her grandfather came to collect her at noon. He pulled the flatbed around, and they loaded the tractor in 40 minutes. He asked her what she planned to do with it. She said, "Store it for now." He asked where. She said, "Southeast corner of the barn." He drove home. Lena sat in the passenger seat with the notebook open in her lap. She did not look out the window. She read the same 3 numbers until the truck turned onto Route 4. That evening, her grandfather set a plate in front of her at the kitchen table. She didn't touch it for 10 minutes. He said, "You're not thinking about that tractor." She looked up. "No," she said, "I'm not." He left her alone. She opened the notebook to a clean page and drew the south boundary again, slower this time, more precise. She labeled the creek. She labeled the fence posts. She drew a straight line along the bottom, 12 feet wide, running east from the auction barn to the back parcels. She wrote one word along that line: abandoned. Then she underlined it. She did not tell her grandfather what she meant. She did not tell anyone. She just knew something. And the room was quiet, and the plate got cold, and Lena Voss sat at that kitchen table knowing a thing, that Sterling Caldwell, with all his wool coats and all his billfolds, had signed away for $18 in front of 14 witnesses. She would wait until the time was right. She was 12 years old. She had time. If you think you know where this is going, you don't. Hit subscribe and keep watching, because what Lena finds in that county library is the last thing Sterling Caldwell ever expected anyone to look for. March 14th, Harwick County Public Library. Back reference room. A microfiche machine hummed in the corner. Lena was 13. She pushed the tray firmly to the left. The machine only worked if you pushed it firmly to the left, and waited for the image to load. She had been coming here every Wednesday for 4 months. Not because of the tractor, because of a word her grandfather said in December, standing at the south fence line after the snow had cleared. He had said, "Sterling's crew has been grading that access road all fall, but I never saw a permit posted." Lena had written it down. Then she came to find out why. The reference room smelled like old paper and floor wax. A librarian named Mrs. Cho kept the deed index books behind a wooden counter and never asked why a 13-year-old wanted them. She just pulled the volume for 1965 to 1975 and set it on the cart without comment. Lena read for 3 hours. Road abandonment filings were not exciting documents. They were typed in the kind of formal language that made your eyes slide off the page. But Lena read every one in that decade, from 1965 to 1975, looking for County Road 7 South, the gravel access strip along the bottom of the auction parcels. She found it on page 211. October 9, 1971, Harwick County Road Abandonment Resolution Number 74A. County Road 7 South, south boundary of parcels 18 through 22, Harwick Agricultural District. Formally withdrawn from public road status. Effective immediately. She read it twice. Then she read the next paragraph. When a county abandons a road, the land does not disappear. It reverts. The surface, the gravel, the 12 feet of legal ground, it splits in half and falls to the landowners on either side. East half to the east neighbor, west half to the west neighbor. Lena pulled out her notebook. She drew the road. She drew the line down the center. East neighbor in 1971. Pruitt Farm. She wrote it down. She would check that later. West neighbor in 1971. She did not know yet. She needed the 1971 parcel map. Mrs. Cho pulled the parcel roll for 1971 without being asked twice. Lena found the west neighbor in 11 minutes. Clifford Voss, Route 4, Harwick County. Her grandfather. She sat with that for a moment. The microfiche machine hummed. The library was empty, except for one man reading a newspaper 2 tables over. Her grandfather had owned the western half of that road strip since October 9, 1971. Not the road, the land itself. 6 feet of it, running 340 feet along the south edge of the Callaway parcels. He had never sold it. He had never been asked. He had never even known it was his. But he had paid taxes on it. That was the part that mattered. Lena asked Mrs. Cho for the tax roll. The county tax assessment record for rural parcels on Route 4, going back to 1972. Mrs. Cho brought 3 binders. Lena found her grandfather's name on the first page. Every year, 1972, 1973, 1974, all the way forward, a small annual figure, never more than $60, listed under a parcel number that matched the road strip. He had paid it every spring, 63 years of receipts, not because he knew what he owned, because the bill came and he was the kind of man who paid his bills. 63 years of taxes on a parcel that Sterling Caldwell's lawyers had never found. Lena wrote the parcel number in her notebook. She wrote the dollar amount for each year, small enough to miss, consistent enough to matter. She drew a line under the column. Then she went home. The kettle was already on when she got to the kitchen. Her grandmother, Vera, was at the counter. Her grandfather was in his chair by the window. Lena set the notebook on the table and sat down. Vera looked at the notebook, then at Lena. "Find what you were looking for?" Lena said, "Almost." Vera poured 2 cups and didn't ask anything else. Over the next 7 months, Lena watched. She walked the south boundary twice a month. She counted survey flags, orange plastic, pushed into the soft ground at 15-foot intervals. She noted the direction they pointed. East, always east, toward the back parcels. She watched trucks, LLC names on the doors. She wrote them in the notebook. The same 3 LLC names kept appearing. She looked them up in the state business registry at the library. All 3 registered to the same address, a business park in the next county. She knew that address. Sterling Caldwell's holding company was registered there. She drew a map on a larger sheet of paper. She taped it to the inside back cover of the notebook. The full parcel layout, Sterling's holdings in gray. The Pruitt land, sold to a Sterling LLC in 2008 for $210,000, hatched in pencil, and the 6-foot strip, her grandfather's strip, running along the bottom of everything Sterling owned. She drew it in red ink. One evening, her grandfather came to the table while she was tracing the boundary lines. He looked at the map for a long time. "What is all this?" he asked. Lena said, "Do you still have your tax receipts? The small parcel on the south side?" He looked at her. She said, "All the way back." He went to the hall closet. He came back with a shoebox. 63 years of small yellow receipts, held together with a rubber band that had lost most of its tension. Lena opened the shoebox. She found the 1972 receipt on top. She found the 1971 resolution in her notebook. She lined them up side by side on the kitchen table. The parcel numbers matched exactly. She closed the shoebox carefully and set it beside the notebook. Her grandfather looked at her across the table. She said, "It's fine, Grandpa. I just needed to check something." He nodded slowly and went back to his chair. Lena looked at the map again. Sterling's back 40 acres, the ones behind the abandoned road strip, the ones that required the access road to reach, were landlocked without it. No other legal entry, no alternate route. The county had sold off the surrounding parcels in 2006, and the road system had shifted north. The only legal way to access Sterling's most valuable land was the 12-foot strip her grandfather had been taxed on for 63 years. The strip Sterling had acknowledged as a separate parcel when he signed that transfer slip at the auction. The strip he had laughed beside. Lena turned to the last page of notes in the notebook. She wrote 4 words. "He needs this road." She closed the notebook. She looked at the map one more time. Then she turned off the kitchen light. $312. That was the number the man on the front porch said first, before he even introduced himself. "Fair market," he said, "for a 6-foot strip. Easement only. You wouldn't even notice it was gone." His name was Fitch. He drove a clean silver truck with a Realty logo on the door, and wore the kind of shoes that had never touched a gravel road. He was holding a clipboard with a pre-printed offer sheet and smiling the way people smile when they expect the answer to be yes. Lena was 16. She looked at the clipboard. She looked at the offer. She looked at Fitch. She said, "I'll think about it." Fitch left his card. He said the offer had a 30-day window. He said it was a fair number. He drove away. Lena went inside and sat at the kitchen table. She opened the notebook to a new page and wrote, "Offer 1, Fitch, $312. Easement, refused." Then she went back to her homework. Fitch called twice more. Neither time did she answer. The 30-day window closed. Lena paid the spring tax bill, $61, and mowed the strip in June the way her grandfather had always mowed it, twice a year. Straight passes, boundary markers clear. She was patient the way land is patient. It did not move. It did not ask for anything. It simply stayed. 14 months later, a different kind of offer came. Not at the front door, by phone. A county official named Mr. Barros. Formal voice, slow cadence, speaking the way people speak when they have rehearsed what they are about to say. The county, he said, was looking at infrastructure improvements in the south boundary corridor. They wanted to discuss a voluntary acquisition, fair compensation, appraised value. He said the number, $31,000. Lena said, "I appreciate the call." Mr. Burrows said, "That's the appraised number." "That's what we're working from," Lena said. "I'll be in touch." She was not in touch. Vera heard the whole call from the hallway. That evening she set 2 cups on the kitchen table and sat across from Lena. She said, "31,000 is real money." Lena said, "Not yet, it isn't." Vera looked at her for a long moment. She had been watching Lena work at that table for 4 years. She had seen the notebooks fill up. She had seen the shoebox of receipts move from the closet to the filing drawer. She had never asked what it all meant. She didn't ask now either. She just picked up her cup. That was enough. Lena watched the land through those years the way you watch something you've already decided about. She noted the new survey stakes in the spring of her 17th year. Sterling's crews had moved the orange flags closer to the boundary. She photographed them with a disposable camera and dated the prints. She kept the prints in a folder behind the tax receipts. She tracked the LLC filings each autumn. 3 became 4, became 6. All the same registered agent. All pointing toward the same back 40 acres. She read the local paper every week. Sterling's project was announced in the spring of her 18th year. Mixed-use development, 90 units, retail on the ground floor, a press event at the county commission meeting with a rendering on a foam board and a handshake from the commissioner. The rendering showed the access road running along the south edge of the property, paved and widened, heading east. Lena looked at the rendering. She recognized the road. She did not call anyone. She did not send a letter. She just wrote the project name in the notebook and turned the page. In Sterling Caldwell's office, 40 miles away, a development attorney named Donovan Hess was managing 17 moving parts at once. He had flagged the south boundary access road in month 4 of the planning process. He had sent it to a title company. The title company had run a standard search and come back clean. Sterling had signed off. The project moved forward. Donovan had not checked the 1971 road abandonment filing. Nobody had told him to. Nobody knew to look. By the time construction financing was secured, the project was committed. 90 units. Retail. Pre-sales opened. A construction loan with a 36-month ceiling. Donovan slept fine. For 2 years. The third offer came in the winter of Lena's 19th year. This one did not come by phone. A man in a 3-piece suit knocked on the door at 10 in the morning. He introduced himself as Warren Cross, attorney at law, retained by Sterling Development Group. He had a leather briefcase. He accepted the coffee Lena poured without being asked. He sat at the kitchen table. He opened the briefcase and placed a document on the table. An easement agreement, pre-drafted, 12 pages. Then he said the number, $180,000, one-time payment, permanent easement, clean close. Lena looked at the document. She did not pick it up. He said, "That's a serious offer. The firm wants to move quickly." She said, "I'm sure they do." She looked at the offer one more time. She looked at the briefcase. She looked at Warren Cross, who had driven a long way and pressed his suit and poured himself into a chair in her kitchen. And she thought about the fact that Sterling Caldwell, who had laughed beside that tractor 9 years ago, was now sending attorneys to her door. She said, "I'm not ready to sell." Warren Cross said, "It's not a sale, it's an easement." She said, "I know what it is." He left the document. He drove away. Lena watched the car until it turned off Route 4. She went inside and sat with her daughter for an hour. Her daughter was 8 years old. She had brought her notebook to the kitchen table that morning and drawn a picture of the barn and the south fence line. Lena looked at the drawing. She said, "What made you draw that?" Her daughter said, "I like the fence posts. There are always 3 of them." Lena looked at the picture. 3 fence posts, just like she had counted on the walk-in. 19 years old now. But the first time she walked it, she had been 12. She folded the drawing and put it in the notebook. She wrote under it. She noticed. In Sterling's office, Warren Cross's callback was not good news. Donovan Hess pulled out the project timeline and counted the months. 7 months left on the construction loan window. Final site approval was locked behind a permit the county wouldn't issue without confirmed legal access to the back 40. They had one route in, one legal option. The woman on Route 4 who kept saying no. Sterling said, "Make it 200,000. Donovan said, "She won't take it." Sterling said, "Everyone takes money." Donovan did not argue. He had met Lena once, briefly, on a call. He had heard the quiet in her voice, the complete absence of urgency. He was starting to understand that she was not waiting for a better offer. She was waiting for a specific moment. The phone rang on a Tuesday morning in March. Lena was at the kitchen table. Coffee, still hot. The notebook opened to a blank page. The number on the screen was a law office in the next county. Area code she didn't recognize, no name attached. She looked at it for 2 full rings. Then she picked up. Warren Cross spoke first. "My client," he said, "is prepared to be flexible on structure." Lena set the coffee cup down on the table with a quiet click. She said nothing. She let the silence sit there for 3 seconds. Warren Cross said, "We're talking about terms, not just a number." Lena said, "Call me back Saturday. My daughter will be here." She hung up. Lena Voss drove down that Saturday morning in a gray sedan. She was 24. She had passed the bar 18 months earlier and was working property rights cases in the next county over. She knew about the strip because her mother had shown her the notebook 3 years ago and said, "Keep this between us for now." Clara set her bag on the kitchen table without saying hello. She pulled out the permit file, the original deed, a copy of the 1971 road abandonment resolution, the tax roll going back to 1972, and the transfer slip from the auction, folded twice, kept in a plastic sleeve, the crease still sharp from 19 years inside a coat pocket. She read in silence for 22 minutes. Vera put the kettle on. No one asked her to. Clara looked up from the tax roll. She said, "They never filed a counter-resolution." Lena said, "No." Clara said, "The county kept taxing it. Every year." Lena said, 63 years. Clara looked at the transfer slip. Sterling Caldwell's signature. The county stamp, the date, she said. He signed over personal property to an address that sits on the boundary parcel. That's an acknowledgement that the parcel existed as a separate legal unit. Lena said, "That's what I thought." Clara closed the file. She said, "They're going to try abandonment." Lena said, "I know." Clara picked up her phone. Warren Cross answered on the first ring. Clara introduced herself as counsel for the Voss Property Trust. She said her client was prepared to discuss terms. She said the hearing date the county had scheduled to review Sterling's access claim could proceed as planned. Warren Cross said, "We'd prefer to resolve this before a hearing." Clara said, "I'm sure you would." She gave him a date, a time, the county clerk's conference room. She hung up and looked at Lena. She said they'll try to argue the road was in continuous use and revert the abandonment claim. Lena said, "Let them." The hearing room was small. Folding table, 4 chairs. A window looking out over the parking lot. Sterling Caldwell sat across the table for the first time in 9 years. He looked at Lena. Something passed through his expression. Not recognition exactly, but the slow, uncomfortable feeling of a man realizing he has been in this situation before and chose wrong the first time. His attorney, Warren Cross, opened with the abandonment argument. Sterling's crews had graded that access road, paved sections of it, run maintenance trucks over it for 7 years. Under the doctrine of adverse possession, continuous use of land by another party, without objection, over a sufficient time period, could extinguish the original ownership claim. Warren set a binder on the table. Maintenance logs, grading receipts, truck schedules. He said, 7 years of uncontested use. Clara placed 3 documents on the table. She did not put them down with any drama. She just set them there, one after another, the way you set plates at a dinner table. The first was the 1971 Road Abandonment Resolution, 19 pages. County seal. The legal chain of title running to Clifford Voss, then by recorded inheritance to Lena Voss. The second was the tax roll, 63 years of annual assessments on that parcel, paid without interruption. Adverse possession cannot succeed against a record owner who has continuously paid taxes on the property. That was the law, had been the law, would remain the law. The third was the auction transfer slip, signed by Sterling Caldwell, stamped by the county, personal property transferred to an address on the boundary parcel. A legal acknowledgement, in Sterling's own handwriting, that the parcel was a recognized and distinct unit on the date of transfer. He had signed the proof, 9 years ago, as a joke. Clara looked at the county official chairing the hearing. She said, "The parcel was never abandoned. The county taxed it without interruption for 63 years. Adverse possession requires uncontested use, but a party cannot claim uncontested use when the owner has a continuous, unbroken tax record and a signed county acknowledgement of the parcel's existence. The claim fails on all 3 grounds." The official reviewed the documents, 1 minute and 40 seconds. He said, "Claim denied." Warren Cross reached for his phone. The negotiation took 11 days. Clara handled every call. She sat at the kitchen table in the evenings and reported back in plain words. They offered a lump sum. $260,000. Clean, one time. Lena said, no lump sum. Clara said, they expected that. Lena said, monthly payment, permanent easement, transferable to heirs, adjusted for inflation every 5 years. Clara said, how much monthly? Lena said, $2,100, starting this month. Clara called Warren cross. Warren pushed back once. He said the monthly structure was unusual for an easement. Clara said, my client's terms are final. Warren pushed back a second time. He said Sterling would need board approval for an ongoing payment structure. Clara said, the construction loan window closes in 61 days. I suggest he get board approval quickly. Warren called back in 4 hours. Every term accepted. Clara called Lena. Lena answered on the second ring. Clara said, it's done. $2,100 a month, inflation clause, transferable, permanent easement, recorded in the county deed books. Lena said, thank you, Clara. She hung up. She looked at Vera, who was standing by the kettle. Vera said nothing. She just turned the kettle on. The signing happened at the county clerk's office on a Thursday morning. It took 9 minutes, 3 signatures, 1 county stamp. Lena walked out to her truck afterward. She sat for a moment. She opened the glove compartment and took out the notebook, the same one Vera had given her when she was 12, the first one, the one with the map of the auction field inside the front cover and 63 tax figures written down the first left-hand page. She turned to the last open page. She wrote the date. Then 1 line. He signed it over. She just waited for it to matter. She closed the notebook. She drove home on Route 4. 3 weeks later, the local paper ran a short item about the easement agreement. Sterling Caldwell declined to comment. The county commissioner said it reflected routine property rights resolution. 3 men who had stood near the coffee pot at the auction 9 years ago and laughed at a 12-year-old girl with a notebook read the item. None of them said anything. That silence said everything. The tractor is still in the southeast corner of the barn. Lena never fixed the engine. She never planned to. The left rear tire holds air now. She patched it when she was 15, but the machine sits where it has always sat, on the boundary line, on the parcel Sterling Caldwell acknowledged existed when he handed her a transfer slip as a joke. Some men collect land. Lena Voss collected patience. If Sterling Caldwell had called you with $260,000 in cash, would you have taken it, or would you have held out for $2,100 every single month for the rest of your life? Think about it. And if you've ever watched someone quiet outplay someone loud, you already know the answer.